This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Wednesday, December 23rd. This is Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, Voice of America is taking every necessary precaution to safeguard its employees. So our broadcast will look a little different today and in the near future as we, out of an abundance of caution, reduce our staffing at VOA headquarters here in Washington. We're working to help keep you informed about what's going on, and we appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. France has agreed on Wednesday to allow freight from Britain and passengers with a negative virus test into the country. This action relaxes a two-day blockade over a new virus variant that had isolated the UK, stranded thousands of truck drivers, and raised fears of food shortages, according to the Associated Press. The European Union is advising its members to discourage non-essential travel to and from Britain, but says people heading to their country of residence should be allowed to do so, provided they undergo a COVID-19 test or quarantine for 10 days. Let's go to London, where Henry Ridgell has details on Britain's COVID variant outbreak.
The new variant of the coronavirus was first detected here in southern Britain in September. By November, it accounted for 25% of all new infections. And by December, that figure had risen to 70% of all new infections. Now, scientists say a virus mutating is perfectly natural. But what makes this mutation different is that it appears to be replacing the old variant of the virus. It has also affected the protein spikes on the surface of the virus itself. And that in turn affects how the virus infects human cells. And they say that the transmissibility of the new variant is up to 70% higher than the old variant. As yet, it doesn't appear more deadly than the old variant of the virus, although because more people are being infected, more people are being hospitalized, and that is putting more pressure on hospitals like the one behind me. There have been other isolated cases of this new variant identified in some other countries, including the Netherlands, Denmark and Australia, which appear linked to the outbreak here in Britain, and another variant in South Africa, which appears unrelated to the mutation here in Britain. Scientists say that the vaccines should still work against this new variant of the virus. But what it does do is show that there may be a future pathway to what they call vaccine escape, where a virus mutates sufficiently that the vaccines no longer become effective. But it will be possible in the future to adapt those vaccines to the new mutations of the virus. Now, the effect of the new variant here in Britain and the new outbreak has been profound. Much of the south of the country is in hard lockdown. Nobody is supposed to travel in or out of London and some surrounding counties. There's no household mixing, and non-essential shops and services are closed. More than 40 countries have imposed travel bans on people arriving from Britain, and there are big tailbacks at some key ports into Britain, and warnings of some shortages in supermarkets as we lead up to Christmas. And all this comes just days before Britain leaves the European Union's Brexit transition period on January the 1st, with warnings of further disruption to come.
When a Berlin-based businesswoman arrived in South Africa earlier this month, she was hoping to spend Christmas with her family and friends before returning home next month to her cosmetic distribution firm. But her plans suddenly changed. Soraya Ali has our story.
Marina Veselowski and her family came to South Africa to spend Christmas with her mother. They expected to fly back to Germany early next month. But thanks to a new fast-spreading strain of the coronavirus, they are now unsure when they'll be able to return home.
I didn't think that air traffic will be affected in the way it is being affected right at the moment. That is shocking, and I don't quite know which way things are going to go. And we're here to spend Christmas with our family, and I don't know, we'll see what will happen.
A growing number of countries, including Germany, have barred travellers from South Africa while they assess how much danger the new variant poses. It's different from one identified in Britain, though both carry mutations that make them more transmissible than previously circulating dominant strains. Marina says being apart from her 76-year-old mother has been the hardest part of it all.
She's been very lonely because she's on her own, and a huge portion of the year she was alone in her apartment. But we're all following the rules and keeping our distance with her. It's very difficult to see your mom after a year and you can't hug her.
South Africa's tourism department said it had no information on the number of flights cancelled or rescheduled due to the bans, but said it was working with the foreign ministry and embassies to facilitate contact between foreign citizens in South Africa and their governments.
Soraya Ali of Reuters with that report. The restrictions imposed during South Africa's battle with COVID-19 have left lasting damage on untold numbers of South Africans, including the nation's already pinched middle class. Viewers Anita Powell caught up with one university-educated young South African who said his middle-class dreams have been shattered.
Like many South Africans, Sekgofatso Valerleng had a tough year as his nation imposed strict coronavirus measures at the cost of the already struggling economy. He was laid off in June and moved in with family.
Things became difficult even at home. I couldn't provide for my family the way that I used to. And at the time I lived with my grandfather and my father, and none of them were employed. So we basically had to survive on the grants that they were receiving from the government.
Millions of South Africans are telling a similar story this year. But Valerleng is the rare South African with a college degree, an emblem of the dream of a robust black middle class. A UN report estimates that as many as 34% of South Africa's middle-class households are now vulnerable. The pandemic dealt a blow to an already contracting economy with record unemployment levels, says economist Dawie Root.
Things were pretty bad even before the beginning of this year. And then we had this virus and we had the lockdown, and everything went from bad to really, really bad. And I think the South African economy today it's not even in a recession, it's actually in a deep depression.
President Cyril Ramaphosa acknowledged the damage the pandemic has wrought and has urged patience. When he announced a hard lockdown earlier this year, he also announced a raft of economic stimulus measures, mostly aimed at poor households.
History will absolve me because the determination to put things right is there. And we may be moving at a slow pace, and we may be moving at a pace where people, want faster movement. But we are painstakingly putting things right.
But many South Africans say it isn't enough. Valerleng couldn't qualify for unemployment benefits because he had not been unemployed for long enough.
I think, unfortunately, there's a certain perspective that even though you're part of the middle class, you would still be able to survive the pandemic, even though you just lost your job, or there's always the assumption that there's still money put somewhere for you to survive, even if it's not for long enough, but there still is something for you to survive on until a certain time. And unfortunately, that's not really the case.
Root says he is fundamentally more worried about the poor, who have felt the worst effects. And he said things won't improve unless the government does something drastic. And that will again probably hurt the middle class.
There's only one thing that the Minister of Finance can do. There's really only one thing. He must spend less money. And inevitably that means he must spend less money on people. That means he must start cutting, he must start closing down things. He must close down the state-owned enterprises. He must start fire a lot of civil servants, and he must pay the rest less. That is what must happen. And that is what is going to happen. Either you do it now while you've still got some control, or inflation is going to do that for you over time eventually.
Valerleng's landed on his feet, for now, with a job at a government hospital. But will things improve for him in 2021? He's optimistic, but the numbers tell a different story. Anita Powell, VOA News, Johannesburg.
The pandemic destroyed many small businesses in Mogadishu, but cash support and financial skills training by aid agencies is helping hundreds of women revive their businesses. Emily Wither reports.
Business was good for Naima Bashir, selling fabric at her shop in Mogadishu. Then COVID-19 hit and her supplies and clients dried up, making it a daily struggle for her to support 15 children.
Coronavirus has affected our business. Things are not what they used to be. The price of fabric became very expensive when the airports were locked down and there were no customers because the government ordered businesses closed. Coronavirus has affected my business in a big way.
Her story is sadly a familiar one in the Somali capital, with the pandemic destroying many small businesses. But cash support and financial skills training by aid agencies is helping hundreds of women turn around their fortunes. The International Organization for Migration partnered with the German Foreign Office and local government to help women-owned small businesses like Na'ima's. About 186 businesswomen received cash support and training in financial management. Years of conflict and the threat of al-Qaeda-linked Islamists battling to overthrow the government leave many Somalis dependent on aid. It is hoped programs like this will empower women to support themselves.
Emily Wither of Reuters with that report. A group of women in Senegal have been supplying solar panels to country homes that are off the power grid. But as Annika Hemmerschlag reports from Dakar, after the coronavirus pandemic, the women changed their focus to supplying solar power to rural clinics.
Senegalese women in the village of Chiamendiago are celebrating because the local clinic that provides prenatal care will soon have electric lights and fans. Head nurse Isaka Dia says with more than 2,500 people from 6 villages, there are about 8 births each month, many of which he attends to at night with only the light from his mobile phone.
I'm so happy, sincerely. I feel like we can work day and night now, even in the heat.
The remote region in western Senegal is off the grid, so the clinic will be powered by the sun. Since 2018, the women-run business El Soler has been installing solar power in rural households. With the COVID-19 pandemic stretching healthcare, it began equipping remote clinics.
We've been just amazed at the reception that the reception we've seen today is a point in case. It's sad in a way that we've had to wait for COVID to hit for us to stop and think about the health clinics. But I'm really pleased that we've kind of managed to pivot this into an opportunity.
The company also provides new skills for women like John Chia, who is scraping to get by with childcare and cleaning jobs.
Before, although I could pay the rent, I could not feed my family because I didn't have the means.
Since the onset of COVID-19, Cha and her coworkers have installed solar-powered lights, fans, and mobile phone chargers at 23 remote clinics. More than 1 million Senegalese lack access to power, according to USAID, and the World Health Organization says rates of maternal mortality are high.
When women arrive to give birth in the night or in the day and all the machines are down, it's obviously a danger for the woman in labor. It's a danger for the newborn. The presence of solar energy, access to solar energy for these rural women, can be life-saving.
And that, say the women, is progress worth celebrating. Annika Hammerschlag for VOA News, Kaolack, Senegal.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, we'll learn what's being done to empower and mentor women and girls in science and technology in Ghana. We'll be right back.
Hello, welcome to Straight Talk Africa, live from the Voice of America headquarters here in Washington. I am Shaka Sali. Straight Talk Africa, we call it like it is. We discuss issues that reflect the interests of our audience without fear or favor. We are guided by facts, and I look at myself as a servant of nothing but the truth.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Although COVID-19 is dominating 2020, climate change has not stopped. VOA Steve Baragona has a look back at progress and disasters in the 5th year since the landmark UN Paris Agreement on climate change.
In 2020, wildfires set records from California to Siberia. The Atlantic spawned more hurricanes than ever recorded. 2020 will be the hottest or second hottest year on record. As the planet's fever rose, the world came down with COVID-19. The coronavirus pandemic emptied streets and grounded air travel. That lowered planet-warming carbon emissions by a record 7%. But that's nothing to celebrate, says World Resources Institute Director Dan Lashof.
Clearly, the emission reductions that we've seen in 2020 due to COVID are not the right way to reduce emissions. No question about that. And most of them are potentially quickly reversible as the economy recovers.
Fundamental changes are needed around the world, he says. Some countries stepped up this year, says Columbia University law professor Michael Gerrard.
The single most important climate policy event of the last year was probably President Xi of China announcing China's goal of getting to net zero emissions by 2060. Several of the countries in Europe also increased their climate ambitions. So much of the rest of the world is moving in this direction.
And I have to say, the United States, under President Donald Trump, has been moving in the opposite direction, he says, loosening environmental regulations and boosting fossil fuel production. But Joe Biden's victory over Trump in November marks a new direction, he says.
There's no question that President-elect Biden is going to do a 180 from what President Trump has done.
Biden has made fighting climate change a top priority. A divided Congress may limit how far he can go to rein in emissions, though. States may go further, like California's governor did this year, ordering an end to gas-powered car sales by 2035. Banks and investors cooled on fossil fuels this year, too. Major banks said they will not invest in Arctic oil and gas projects. And the U.S. Federal Reserve called for climate action for the first time, Lashof notes.
The idea that climate change poses a serious threat to the U.S. financial system has totally gone mainstream, and 2020 was really the year that took hold.
2020 marks the 5-year anniversary of the UN Paris Agreement to fight climate change. But the world is nowhere near the goals that leaders set to stop dangerous global warming, says UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres.
The commitments made in Paris were far from enough to get there, and even those commitments are not being met.
The world's fever kept rising in 2020, and scientists say time is running out to bring it down. Steve Baragona, VOA News.
The Pentagon has dispatched several naval vessels and a Marine Expeditionary Unit to the coast of Somalia to support an operation repositioning hundreds of U.S. troops to bases elsewhere in East Africa. The Pentagon says the ships are supporting Operation Active Quartz with a mission to relocate U.S. forces in Somalia while maintaining pressure on violent extremists and supporting partner forces. It was announced in November that U.S. President Donald Trump planned to draw down U.S. troops in Somalia. The U.S. has approximately 700 military personnel in Somalia to train Somali troops and conduct counterterrorism missions. In our technology report, unemployed people in Ghana often feel alone and isolated. In Accra, Nadia Owusu, a digital marketing consultant and technology enthusiast, is using digital skills to empower, mentor young girls and women on how to enter the field of science and technology. VOA's technology reporter Paul Ndiho spoke to Nadia Owusu in Accra, Ghana.
Nadia Owusu, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you so much, Paul. Nice to be here.
How is Ghana?
Ghana has been very eventful over the past few days pertaining to our elections, but everything is calm now.
You sound like somebody who voted for the president. You're so excited.
Well, I like his policies for young people. He's created so many jobs for young people. I'm a young Ghanaian who is very interested in technology in Africa. youth development, youth advocacy, and also women empowerment.
President-elect Nana Akufo-Addo, who in the last 4 years has championed a lot of initiatives geared towards helping young people. He has created an initiative that helps young people like you to get their footing on the ground.
He's created youth employment programs like the NAPCO that is employing young graduates right after the university. He's created jobs for them that's going to be paying them. They are also going to be retained in the jobs if they perfect their skills. And he's also started the Youth Entrepreneurship Agency that actually serves as an incubator for young people who can go and get entrepreneurial training, capacity building projects. And they are also giving them some substantial funds. Even with the COVID season, the president was able to send out some relief for startups in the ecosystem to be able to use it to manage their businesses during the COVID season. So for me, these initiatives are a way of pushing young people in the country, especially Ghana, where we are seeking to digitize the economy. Young people are into tech, young people are into making sure the sustainable development goals are achieved in Ghana. So such policies, such interventions are very critical for young people in Ghana.
As a young person in tech, how is the tech landscape there in Ghana?
We are seeing more women-led initiatives, more women-led groups who are training young women in deprived areas and marginalized society to start learning basic digital skills, basic coding skills that they can adapt to themselves to be able to be competitive on the global market. And we have so many tech hubs now. We have more creative hubs that are serving as spaces, safe spaces for young people who want to do some positive change in the country.
In terms of the digital divide that you talked about, how has it affected young women?
I believe if we are pushing for more women-inclined technologies, for more digitized stuff that can reach people. So let's talk about offline activities that can reach women in marginalized communities, marginalized environments. I feel the digital divide can actually close up. One major problem would be the language divide, because if you're in the urban areas in Accra, let's say Accra, Kumasi, but we are not reaching people in the north, we are not able to get to them and communicate to them in languages that they can understand, then they would always feel that you're above us. So, well, this thing is not meant for us. But if we're able to reduce the languages we speak in technology, if we're able to bring it down to levels that actually induce people to appreciate what technology can do for them, the digital divide when it comes to Africa, bringing it back to Ghana, would actually close up.
I think you make a great point there. The culture divide or the language barrier is a big deal. When you go across Africa, we are divided along tribal lines. We don't speak the same languages. So if people, especially people who are in the coding world, if they can come up with languages, coding languages that cater to a lot of people in our communities, I think it would make a big difference.
I totally agree with you. Because if we see some of the apps we are using, Twitter, Facebook, Google, these languages, if you write any African language, they are unable to translate it. Sometimes people have said that their translation is really racist, to put in quotes, because if I type something in tree on Twitter and I want people back in my country to understand it, if they translate it on Twitter, it's not going to give them the real replication of what I'm saying. So language divide it's very key. For me, I'm encouraging young people in Africa, to start softwares that can benefit Africans, to start coding in ways that would be consumable for any African.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's been amazing.
That was VOA's technology reporter Paul Ndiho speaking to Nadia Owusu, a digital marketing consultant in Accra, Ghana. Top European Union officials say the bloc must invest more heavily in Mediterranean countries to be able to compete with China. Beijing has financed or purchased key infrastructure in the region as part of its so-called Belt and Road Initiative. More in this report by Alfonso Bito in Barcelona. Narrated by Henry Ridgewell.
Barcelona's port used to be owned by Spanish companies, but giant international companies have moved in. Part of this facility is now owned by Hutchison Ports, a Chinese company that operates a new semi-automated terminal.
In the last 25 years, many have been acquired by international companies, either Chinese-owned or Turkish, Russian or American.
25 years ago, the European Union helped set up the Union for the Mediterranean to boost its economic and political ties across the Mediterranean region. But the group, made up of 42 member states, is struggling against foreign competition, says the EU's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell.
I have to say that the situation in our southern neighborhood has, in some aspects, worsened. We haven't achieved some of our objectives, and challenges have been growing faster than our collective response to it.
Borrell says trade with North African countries has the potential to be 4 times greater than it is today, but a lack of coordination among member states has created an opening for powers like China and Russia to expand their influence across North Africa and southern Europe.
We must admit that we don't have enough resources coming from the national budgets. We need absolutely to develop private investment.
Beijing's multi-billion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative to connect Asia, Africa and Europe has seen China establish shipping lines in the Mediterranean alongside submarine cables and 5G mobile networks. The digital infrastructure will shape the competition for 21st century technological dominance, and the EU will need greater financial firepower to compete, says analyst Eduard Martin Lineros.
In the case of Europe, we need the collaboration between private and public sector to get these investments, because if not, it will be very difficult to make a big deployment around the Europe.
China now has stakes in over a dozen European ports. Chinese investment has modernized facilities, but also triggered debate over Europe's ability to influence strategic interests in its own backyard. For Alfonso Beato in Barcelona, Henry Ridgewell, VOA News.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, we thank you for watching.